right, guys, the race to the Flash ends with the controversial DC film Man of Steel. It was 10 years ago this week that Man of Steel came out in theaters and essentially kicked off the DCEU, or the DC Extended Universe as they call, or as it was loosely called for their cinematic universe, which is kind of culminating in the new release for The Flash. And obviously, if you've seen the trailers, there's stuff in there that kind of goes back to the Man of Steel film and what's changed because of time travel and all that, blah, blah, blah. So that's why I was like, Man of Steel's got to be an important one to check out before checking out The Flash. So here we are. This is a film that was very divisive. I know people who love this film. I know people who hate this film. The internet, definitely this is one film that the internet likes to hate on. And I'm going to tell you right up front, I mean, I see some of the criticism, but I love this film. I think this film is great. Oh, so let's start off by saying I'm going to give you a little synopsis of the story, and then we're just going to talk kind of spoiler-ish for the rest of the video, because this film's been out 10 years. If you haven't seen it yet, you should go back and check it out. I think it's really good. But essentially the plot here is it's the origin of Superman. It's a Clark Kent trying to find his way in the world and what it means to be this alien outsider, and should he expose himself to the world. But he's also got to come to grips with a Kryptonian named Zod who's after him because essentially he is the key to restoring the people of Krypton. And that's kind of a very loose version of the story. There's a lot going on here. So if you've never seen the film, go back, check it out. And if you have, let's go. Let's get into it. I think that, and we'll start it off with Henry Cavill as Superman, I think is really good. I don't think it's a great performance, but I think he does really good at selling us on this more vulnerable, more timid Clark Kent who's very, trying to figure out his place in the world. He's no Christopher Reeves. I know everybody loves Christopher Reeves Superman, but I think the Henry Cavill version is a more modern Superman that I think we needed to see, and people can debate that back and forth. People can hate on it all they want, but I honestly think that the way they went with this film initially setting out was the right choice. I think they made a lot of bold and very interesting choices for a Superman to kind of differ him from a Christopher Reeves, because why would we want just the same thing over and over? Let's try a little different. And I think they explored some stuff here where maybe Clark's father not wanting him to expose, doesn't want his son to expose his powers to the world. Yeah, let a busload of kids die, because by you saving him, that almost exposes you to the world. And if the world finds out about you, who knows what they're going to do to you? They'll probably try to tear us apart. And so that was a very interesting dynamic, one that was very controversial at that time too. When the trailers came out, a lot of people were like, "Whoa, Pa Kent, you're supposed to be the reason in here." But this is a version of Pa Kent that's a little more protective, a little more like the world is a different place than when Superman originally came out. But at the same time, people are still kind of the same, and it's wanting to protect your child is first and foremost your prerogative as a parent. And so I could see a lot of the choices that Kevin Costner's Pa Kent makes is justified. Yeah, and I think Costner sells that performance. He's a really big reason why I think this works, is his performance, that heartache he feels just trying to protect his son. I think Amy Adams as Lois Lane is very solid. She's a great actress. Not as damsel in distress as previous versions of Lois Lane. I think she's a little more capable. She's a very smart Lois Lane, and I love the fact that they allowed her to do the detective work, the reporting, to narrow down who Superman is. She figures it out in movie one. She's not bumbling around like just because Clark's got glasses on, she can't figure out it's him. I mean, I appreciate that they let her figure it out and create a relationship with Superman. I dug that quite a bit. Michael Shannon as General Zod is one of my favorite DC villains, because he's not villainous in the typical bad guy way. He is, and he says it in the movie, he is programmed from a DNA level to just be, looking into the best interest for Krypton. That's his sole purpose, is to protect Krypton at all costs. And as a soldier, you got to do it by any means necessary, which means to us and our protagonists that he looks like a bad guy, that, he's a threat, which he is, but you look at it from his perspective, he is just trying to protect his people, his Kryptonian heritage. And even if that means committing genocide, as wrong as that is, you can at least understand that he's not a bad guy. I mean, he's a bad guy, but he's got motives that if you were in his shoes, you could almost see, like, I have to protect my people. Like, which I'm not saying is, genocide is bad. Genocide is bad, but I'm just saying you can kind of see it's like the Thanos thing where a lot of people are like, I see where Thanos is coming from. It's kind of like that. That's why I think makes Michael Shannon's interpretation of Zod very compelling, and I just think his performance overall is the best performance of the film. Then you got like Russell Crowe coming in as Jor-El. I think he's great in this, in the limited amount of screen time he gets. I mean, the whole beginning of the film, which I love, by the way, just this 10-15 minute segment on Krypton where you get to kind of see this world as, before it kind of crumbles. And the aesthetic they went with is great because it differs from the crystal-y stuff from the Richard Donner Superman era of films. And it just gives us a new take on what Krypton is, different set of technology, which I thought was a great choice, and I thought it was fantastic. Diane Lane does great as Clark's mom. There's some good scenes with her and Clark one-on-one, him as a kid, him as an adult. You feel for that relationship, and it tugs at the heartstrings. And of course, Laurence Fishburne plays Perry White. I think while he's also not in this film much, anytime he's on screen, I dig it. I love Laurence Fishburne. And of course, the other star of this film is actually composer Hans Zimmer. That score is absolutely phenomenal. It is one of the best, if not the best, superhero score out there. That's right, I said it. I love this score. I would just listen to this score on its own, by itself, driving in my car. It is so good. Just every time the score comes up in the film, I'm just glued. I'm into it. It really accentuates the action and the emotion and everything going on in this film really well. I think Zack Snyder's vision for this, while he didn't write this, he didn't come up with a story for this. A lot of people forget it was Christopher Nolan and David S. Goyer who worked on the 3 Batman, the Dark Knight trilogy. They kind of came up with a story for this, and then Zack Snyder came in, and directed it. And his directing choices are very interesting, and I dig this film because it's got like an indie film feel. There's a lot of the camera style they chose to go with. It was like a one camera kind of handy cam kind of style. And I totally dug that. It gave it a different vibe. It gave it a different feel. And at points felt like an indie film, like weird close-ups of different things. I just thought added to the aesthetic and made this feel very unique. Especially in a film that's essentially a first contact alien invasion movie, which I think a lot of people overlook that fact. Like, they're just like, oh, it's a Superman movie. But, I mean, it's just like how Winter Soldier is a espionage film, or, The Dark Knight Rises is kind of a war film. This is a alien / first contact story that, I think is executed actually very well. It's really well done. And the big criticism from this movie comes in that third act where everything just gets blown to hell. Buildings are falling, people are dying left and right, and people criticize, well, why didn't Superman save him? He didn't do enough saving people. He was literally on the job for 3 days. He isn't really Superman till maybe the end of the movie. Somebody says Superman, but that's the one time they kind of mention his name. But he's still figuring out his powers. He's still trying to figure out, how to navigate the situation. I mean, he's got a whole alien army of super people who are as strong as him, taking over. What else is he supposed to do? When people criticize that third act and although it's too much destruction and blah, 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 I don't buy it. Like, could they have maybe shown him saving some more people? Sure, but I don't have a problem with him being a naive first day on the job superhero who made some mistakes. And I think it added to a foundation that they could have gone with in subsequent sequels. I'll talk about that in a second, but I think they laid a lot of great groundwork here, and especially in the scene where he's got to snap Zod's neck. Another problem a lot of people had with that film. He had no other choice. It was a tough choice he had to make. Zod gave him no other option. What else was he going to do? They couldn't put him in cuffs. They couldn't put him in jail. He had to put Zod down, and it hurt him. And that scream he gives there at the end of the film, he ended his whole race of people by snapping Zod's neck. The last person from Krypton besides himself had to kill him in order to save humanity. And it was a bold choice, and I think that would have helped lend to the foundation for where they could have gone. Now, Batman versus Superman, Dawn of Justice, Maybe not the sequel we all would have hoped for. I don't hate the film. I know a lot of people hate that film, but I think that might have been too early to bring in the other DC heroes. I think they should have done another movie or two just focusing on Henry Cavill Superman and, you know, building up a lot of these pieces they put here, because there's so many great things in this film that they could have built on, like, and have Superman learn from this experience and become the Superman we all kind of know. And I just think, you know, the big misstep was from the sequel after this. I think this was the perfect film to start a cinematic universe with and build it in an interesting way, but they rushed everything else, and that's a story for a different day. But just focusing on this film, I think it's a lot of fun. It's very emotional, and I think it's very different from a lot of other superhero films we get. Maybe a little too punchy for some people, which is fine. But, like, I love the Smallville scene where he's fighting all the Kryptonians. I love all his interactions with Pa Kent. I love the scenes where he's flying and he's smiling. A lot of people like to ignore that because that doesn't fit their narrative of, oh, this is just a sad, brooding Superman. No, he's discovering himself, like all of us had to at some point. And I appreciate that, and that's why I get invested in this film. I remember tearing up in the theater at a lot of the scenes where he's just trying to figure himself out as a kid, as a teenager, as an adult, and it works for me. So sue me. If it doesn't work for you, hey, whatever. Film is subjective after all. But at the end of the day, I'm going to give this film an A-. I totally love this film. I'm excited to see what they kind of tweak with The Flash. And I would have loved to have seen a proper sequel to this film. But, hey, it is what it is. I will always have this film and, you know, treasure this film. But what do you guys think? What are your opinions on Man of Steel? Do you love it? Do you hate it? How wrong do you think I am? I'm sure a lot of you think I'm wrong, and they're probably going to hit that thumbs down. Whatever, that's your prerogative. If you could also please hit that thumbs up or thumbs down button, hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell notification to be notified whenever I drop new videos. And yeah, guys, The Flash is here. I can't wait to see this film, and I can't wait to talk about it. And I'm hoping maybe there'll even be some spoilery stuff I could do a video on, because I think this is going to be chock full of cool Easter eggs and cool surprises. So yeah, so until the next review, guys, I'll be seeing you.